You go. Okay, you hear that?
Yep, thanks.
Okay, I'm gonna start back over real quick so that that's all on there. As noted, the site is located on the minor collectors, Eddy Lane heading north-south, Liberty Pike running east-west, just south of Liberty Pike, of course, and it's located central to a number of recreational and commercial nodes. The existing zoning is light industrial and the proposed zoning is PD planned district. There are a couple of overlays on the site. There's the floodway fringe overlay, which just barely touches the site, but I'll show you that in a minute. And the central Franklin overlay, which covers the entire site. Envision Franklin on the bottom of the screen, you'll see the design concept for the property is industrial flex. And as a part of that industrial flex concept, there's a special considerations portion that I'm going to be coming back to a couple of times during the presentation. And one part of it says the area east of Franklin Road along Liberty Pike and Eddy Lane has an established industrial character that is expected to become a mix of commercial and multifamily residential uses as redevelopment occurs. So this is an area that Envision Franklin specifically looked at for multifamily and commercial, and part of that is likely the support for the downtown commercial, the factory commercial, the Jameson commercial, and all of those pieces that are all kind of in the same general area. So existing conditions on the site, right? You've got the existing co-op building behind it. You've got the cell phone tower with its associated fall zone. And there's not a lot of existing tree canopy, but there's some more as you get toward the west, the back portion of the site. There's some back there. So we will be required to preserve a good portion of that tree canopy. You'll also see that there are two small streams that poke into the site on the northwest corner, and the 100-year floodplain comes into the site right there as well. Now, that's that floodway fringe overlay that I was talking about earlier. That's just right here in this small portion of the property, which we will not be encroaching upon that. So moving on to the proposed master plan, so we've got 4 residential buildings, and one of them has a piece of office associated with it, about 7,000 square feet, excuse me. Right now we're estimating 260 units. I say estimating because that's probably the high end. So we're still working through the size of the units and how they lay out in the buildings and things like that. And that's going to affect the overall count. But somewhere around 260 is where we're sitting right now. And right now with this proposed plan, we would be preserving 63% of the tree canopy on the site, which is well beyond the required for this type of development. One thing that came up in the pre-app meeting that we had with the city this morning that we're not showing on this plan, but will become a part of the plan, is some buffering specifically along the northern border here between the property and the industrial property to the north, as well as on this corner, the south, or well, I guess it's really just the western corner between this residential building and this industrial building to the west. Connections, right now we're looking at 2 connections, one directly across from Reynolds Drive and one to the south along Fort Granger Drive. And then we're also looking at some parallel parking along Fort Granger Drive to kind of liven up the streetscape and create that sense of space, that sense of place along the front of the residential building. The residential buildings, it doesn't show on this plan, but they will have access to the sidewalks, both along Fort Granger, along Eddy Lane, and along the created road across from Reynolds Drive. To talk about the amenities, so we're proposing a clubhouse. Well, I guess we're proposing an amenity with a pool and pool deck and some kind of pocket parks around it. And then there'll be a clubhouse that sits within this residential building. And then we're also planning some additional pocket parks throughout the property, one of which would be kind of surrounding this office building, well, this office piece of the building at the corner of Fort Granger and Eddy Lane. We're talking through that being kind of a plaza space with some you know, some umbrellas or some tables for eating your lunch or whatever, and then going back to the office. And then most importantly for this site is the pedestrian connectivity and the walkability. That's going to be kind of the biggest amenity for the people who look to live here. We will look into doing some interior trails, but really the strong suit here is your connectivity to the exterior nodes that I mentioned earlier. To come back to the Envision Franklin special consideration portion of Industrial Flex, it says connectivity should be improved by providing sidewalks, trails, and a connection to Fort Granger. So moving on to the next page, we're taking a look at the walkability from the site to the places of interest surrounding. Fort Granger obviously is very close, and if I'll go back one real quick, we're looking at a connection here that there would be a crosswalk, and then there's a tie-in trail that goes right here behind this this building here that would then continue all the way down to Pinkerton Park. You can then cross the bridge and get to downtown that way as well. And then if you're going north, you can get to Liberty Elementary, Jamison Station, the factory, and Harlansdale. All of those are less than, I guess Harlansdale is the furthest, and that's a 12-minute walk. So everything on the screen, though, is under an 18-minute walk. What that means is these are opportunities to take cars off the street. You know, traffic volume can be lowered by the ability to walk to places. So that's something we're looking at here and hoping to be a real amenity for the community. So then the biggest, I guess the biggest piece that we've kind of heard in some of the emails that we've been receiving leading up to this meeting is a lot about Eddy Lane and the existing hazards and conditions of Eddy Lane as it sits today. So we have done a traffic study, and the traffic study came back not specifically requiring a lot of improvements itself, but there are some improvements that the city is looking to us to make. And there's also some improvements that we feel that we need to make in order to eliminate some of the existing safety hazards. So something that we are looking at doing is doing a full 3-lane section from Liberty Pike to the southern portion, to the southern property line of our site. So that would go from this dot here all the way down to right here. That would all be 3 lanes. So it'd be one lane going one way, 1 lane going the other, and then a turn lane in the middle. We're also looking at, so there's the main safety hazard on Eddy Lane is, in my opinion, I suppose, but is that when a 100-year flood happens, there's water on the road, both at the northern end and at the southern end next to Murfreesboro Road. So we have to have a solution for that. It's not safe, and it wouldn't be safe for the people of the development that we're doing. It's not safe for the people that are watching tonight. So we don't know exactly how high it would have to raise yet, but we are working through the numbers of raising the bridge over the culvert there just south of Eddy Court. So that would be raised just out of the 100-year floodplain. Right now, it obviously sits in the 100-year floodplain, but it would be raised up so that there would be safe access to Liberty Pike under a 100-year flood storm event. We're also looking at the sidewalks along Eddy Lane. That's something else we've heard a lot about. So right now, there's only 700 linear feet of sidewalks along Eddy Lane. Those exist out in front of the data center and in front of the 4 newer homes that are just south of the data center. So there's about 1,700 linear feet south of the data center that needs to be installed, and there's about 1,620 or 30 linear feet to the north of the data center that needs to be installed. This is likely going to take a joint effort, but it's something that we've been looking into, we've been assessing the cost of, and it's something that we like to talk to some other developments in the direct area to help and kind of work through so that we can create a full safe pedestrian connectivity from Liberty Pike all the way to Murfreesboro Road. So we're working through that. We're not sure we have all the answers right now, but we certainly are on our way to figuring that out. Lastly, to talk about the architecture, well, first of all, going back to the Envision Franklin special consideration in industrial flex, it says that architectural design should retain or provide elements of the established industrial character. So what we're pulling from with this provided proposed architecture, which by the way was done by 906 Studios, we're pulling from the character of Jameson Station. We think it's something that was really successful architecturally, and it's something that fits this area, fits this industrial flex area. Let's see, I was going to say, oh, and I mentioned earlier that there would be pedestrian connections here. We're not showing it on this elevation, but that's something, again, we spoke about in the pre-app meeting this morning. And there will be stoops with sidewalks to the main sidewalk that runs along Eddy Lane, so that there will be that, again, more opportunities for walkability to lower the traffic impact on the surrounding area. So with that, I'm going to go back to the master plan. I'm happy to move around and go to different slides as you have questions. And Kevin will help me answer some of those as well. I can already see that there are a couple questions coming up in the chat. Let's see. Whose property are you expecting to?
So let me grab this, Matt.
Okay.
So one thing I want to make clear is the traffic study does not have us reducing traffic by saying people are going to walk. The traffic study done assuming that there is no walkability. Obviously people will walk some places, but we do not sit there and base traffic studies on that. We have had several meetings with the city, and we have been approached by a couple of aldermen about the sidewalk issue on Eddy Lane. And I shouldn't say an issue, but the lack of sidewalks. We are talking to the city because obviously we don't have the power to come in and take anybody's property. We're private people. But the city does have plans for Eddy Lane. It is a minor collector. It's ultimately supposed to be what, a 3-lane road, Matt?
Yes.
With a multi-use trail on our side and a sidewalk on the other side.
Right.
So what we are trying to do is work with the city now to put some private investment into the sidewalks. And then at some point, the city may say, hey, just work from your place on up. But I know the aldermen, especially Alderman Baggett, who represents this area, would like to see some solutions to the lack of sidewalks. So anything with the sidewalks will be a joint private public venture. The co-op is going out to Lewisburg Pike.
Just showing who's enemy.
I'm sorry. The co-op is going out to Lewisburg Pike. We are building a new co-op on Lewisburg, and I call it Tom Anderson in Lewisburg, but it's right off 840. Is it the Lewisburg?
Yes.
You know what the exit is, Matt?
Yes, it's Lewisburg Pike and 840.
Yes. So that's where the co-op is going.
Will there be an affordable housing component?
So let me sit here and say, because I'm in the middle of Brownland Fund for 2 years. At Brownland, we started out with a huge affordable housing component. As the 2 years went on, things changed until where there's very small affordable housing left there. We have come here with the intention of affordable units, and a portion of this, it's important, and I'm a big believer in it. Right now, I'm proposing 260 rental units, but I've already begun to talk to some aldermen, and this may change to all for sale and smaller amount of units. So this plan is the very first starting point, and where it ends, We don't know exactly yet on what the mixture is, if there's all for sale, all rental, a mixture of both. You know, right now we're working at the planning level, trying to make sure the plan is fully in compliance with Envision Franklin. And then I will start meeting with the aldermen. And, you know, ultimately this is a zoning, so the aldermen will ultimately decide this, but right now we're at the planning, working with the staff to make sure that we have a plan that is in compliance with Envision Franklin.
Let's see, what has been this, well, why do we need more apartments? I think that, you know, I don't want to just dodge that question. I think that there's a place for apartments in Franklin, and it's something that Envision Franklin, you know, took into account. I understand that there are a lot of apartments in Franklin, but there are the commercial uses here to support apartments, and they would benefit from the support of, you know, multifamily is really, I should say multifamily, because again, we don't really know how this is going to end up being apartments, condos, what exactly it is. But we feel like this is a really good place considering the supporting uses.
6,600 approved, but not
How many?
6,680 approved apartments from here.
Oh, not in that.
That's what Alan, that Alan,
600 and something.
6,000.
I don't,
I understand the initial, oh no, not apartments. The truth is, there's no apartments for rent in Franklin. Once again, I'm not sitting here saying this is where it will end up as apartments. I'm not a voting member of the board. And so, you know, there will be things, but you know, Ovation's in bankruptcy. There's a lot of apartments are on paper, but will never be built. I understand the numbers. I've seen them. I've heard them. I've lived out in Middle Tennessee for 30 years. But I understand what you're saying, but there is a need and there is a market for apartments. Now, once again, I'm not going to sit here and say these rolled up apartments. There's a market and need for condos. There's just a need for housing badly in the city of Franklin. I mean, very badly. And you really, I think it's important to get more housing closer to downtown and the services. So this is a great spot for it. We're very excited for it, but whether it's apartments or condos, we do not know yet.
what has been discussed about the condition of the road as far as the width of the road? And we talked about that. I think it's eventually going to be a 3-lane road, correct, Kevin?
It is.
Yeah.
Well, look, no, once again, I'm not the city or the city engineer. The city's plans is for it to be a 3-lane road with a multi-use path on one side and a sidewalk on the other.
Alan Sims says, do we need more apartments? Same man.
I don't.
Um,
Okay, why not build let's see. Yeah, why not build a parking garage and reserve more green space instead of surface parking?
We feel like we're preserving this largely, very closely, the large amount of the same amount of green space that exists now. Garages are obviously extremely expensive when it's not needed. And if we ended up trying to build a garage, we'd end up with trying to do more units to try to cover the cost of that. So we felt this was an equal balance right here.
3 lanes does nothing for the intersection, which is already overloaded, and you can't install a light because of the railroad tracks. What are you doing to deal with that issue? There's no room to widen it.
So once again, we have done a traffic study. The traffic study is scoped by the city. The traffic study is reviewed by the city's professionals, not just by the city, but independent. And the traffic study shows Eddie Lane to be at a very acceptable level of service. I'm not here to argue traffic because I mean, I don't live out there, and I think traffic in Nashville generally, it's just terrible. But that is what the traffic study is saying. So the city as well as us are bound by the traffic study.
Is there an assumption on mix and population expectations for the estimated 260 units? How do you see that impacting the local area for student increases at local schools, increases in traffic, or any other assumed impact you have considered?
Matt, is this the Franklin Special School District?
Yeah, I believe so.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
So
And
the
you-
Franklin
they own
Special
the
School
administrative
District
office.
has a significant amount of capacity in it. I know that because Brownland's in it, and we have talked to the school. Or not I don't want to say I, but Greg Gamble has talked to the school person and has got exact numbers. You know, I know I want to make sure don't say anything offensive here to anybody, but Franklin is becoming so gentrified and so wealthy that I'm not sure the student population is increasing at the Franklin Special School District. Because there's a lot of people who just quite frankly don't have kids that age anymore who are buying the houses.
Right.
We see that a lot right now.
There's there's a fair amount of tractor trailer traffic at Eddie Lane and along Fort Granger. Any plans on dealing with that?
Well, it's an industrial area now. That is what is supposed to be out here is industrial
So do you
trucks.
guys-
I think as it changes, there'll be less trucks, but right now it is an industrial area.
right, that's essentially what Envision Franklin has predicted and projected, and it does, I mean, that's the idea. Can you talk more about your expectations regarding pedestrian pathways and any engagement with the railroad track?
There's paths under the track now, right, Matt?
Correct. Yeah, at the end of Eddie Court, you can get under the track there. It's just a matter of getting to Eddie Court. Now, Eddie Court doesn't have a sidewalk on it, but it also has extremely low traffic count. So you can get under that way. And then as far as additional pedestrian pathways, a lot of them are already in place. Now we will have to provide some access from our, if you can see my mouse, our southwest corner to get to that, to the trail that's in there for Fort Granger, but we're only talking about 100 yards there. And then the rest of it is Greenway Trail along the frontage and 5-foot sidewalk that we talked about on this page here, or this page here.
Hey, Matt, can
Yeah,
you hear me?
I can.
I'm the one who asked that question. I wasn't
Yeah.
talking about the necessarily the designed paths along the railroad. I was talking about the ghost paths that will likely form as a result of 260 units being placed at this location. I mean, of course, CSX owns those rail tracks. They're not really supposed to be a traffic pattern, but I live on Daniels Drive, and I have a lot of neighbors, and then a lot more neighbors in the backyard on the railroad tracks.
Yeah, I hear you. I grew up.
I'm concerned
on a
about
railroad.
it. Are there any efforts to try and curtail that kind of traffic in your design?
You know, well, in our design, we are preserving, you know, tree canopy back there. We're really not pulling residences toward the CSX rail line.
I noticed that.
But
I
do
noticed that. I
hear-
noticed that. I actually commend you on that, keeping
Yeah.
that green area back there that you kind of provided that buffer, but it does appear to be the perfect area
Well,
to
you're
create like
right.
paths or park type space back there, because it is a pretty unfettered green space, and you might be able to develop into something. Would there be fencing, or, you know, it really doesn't,
Right.
almost doesn't matter,
Yeah.
because even if you fenced it off, you can still get across Fort Granger and go onto Fort Granger and climb down the side of the hill, and then you're on the railroad tracks.
Yeah, so let me answer that the best I can, Don. I think from our site, you know, like if we put a dog park or something back there, we will do what we can to encourage people not to walk off the back of our property towards the railroad track. Once people are on Fort Granger's trail, I can't regulate bad behavior.
Right.
And I've got to hope that someone doesn't think running on a railroad track outside of Matt is a good idea.
No, it's nothing.
And
it's
apparently
nothing
Matt
else.
has survived it. But I mean,
Some people.
I think what the best we could do is try to do things in our property to make sure that it's not encouraged, or we put fences up. Once again, if you put the fence up and then people climb it and do this and do that, that is beyond my parenting skill right there.
Well, and I think,
I've raised two of them and I've not been perfect about it. And I know people do what they want to do, but
I
you
think the
know, I
best.
haven't seen too many people beat a train before.
Right. We can put fences, we can, do things like that, but I really think the best solution is just providing better opportunities for safe places to get, safe ways to get around, which is to give, make very clear paths to Fort Granger, make a very clear path to get to the place where you can safely cross under the rail line. We can only do so much about bad behavior, but giving a really easy opportunity for good behavior goes a long way.
I do think that, you're right. There's not only so much you can do as in the design capacity for something like this. I think that though, my question just kind of, it hints at what the larger issue with this project is going to be in general, which is density. So you're gonna create a lot of extra density, and where any flack for the project is going to come from is going to be in the increased density, and that has to be understood that it's going to be everywhere. So I do think that is going to be where the biggest hindrance is for local approval of the project is always going to be, and it's
Sure.
that kind of stuff.
Understood.
And once again, density is something every time I'm in Franklin, I understand it. Franklin has developed a very low density compared to everywhere else. And I'm not saying Franklin is everywhere else. But where you're downtown and where you can get pedestrian activity is the place you're supposed to do it. And that's kind of why Envision Franklin points it out right here. This is the area, and you've got GBT now come in and can pour a ton of money into the factory finally, and you gotta be able to support it.
When you were analyzing this, did you take into account? And I'm not even really certain where we're at with this right now. But Franklin's plan for the riverfront development. Do you know where that landed in terms of pathways related to that? Because the railroad tracks are kind of a super highway to that proposed area of development south of Lily Mills and on the portions of the north side of the river as well, northeast side of the river. Did you look into any of that, or do you know where we're at with that?
I do not.
I don't know where we're at with that. Now, there are a few aldermen on here and a couple planning members. If anybody does know, you're welcome to unmute but we don't, that's not something we've looked at now.
And then
At least
Don,
not to
while
this,
you're
but
on-
now we will, of course.
And Don, while you're on, let me talk about the cell tower.
Hmm.
So co-op and we didn't know it. We didn't find out that this about 30 days ago. The cell tower was supposed to expire this year. I'm not the biggest fan of cell towers,
Mhm.
and it cost me a lot of buildable area anyway.
Yeah.
But the co-op renewed it for 10 years. So it's
Oh, they
there for
did.
10 more years. So yeah, the cell tower is staying. And that leads me to the next question about buzzards.
Oh, yeah.
All right, I'll sign off here.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Don. You don't have to leave. I'll answer more questions.
Oh, that's all right.
So,
Yeah,
well,
Debbie is asking about buzzards on the cell tower. I haven't seen them. I believe you, they're out there. I don't think anyone would appreciate the way I was taught to get rid of buzzards.
it's something
I don't
that,
know. We'll have to
Greg and-
talk to some bird person and figure out how to get rid of them. We don't want them around. I promise you that.
right, Greg and I talked about that this morning. He's apparently got somebody he's gonna get in touch with to talk through it. But it's something, I think it was Debbie. Yeah, Debbie, it's something that we had not thought about, we didn't know about. But we are actively looking into it now.
I'd like to volunteer Matt to sit out there with an air horn.
I'm
I
not
think that
getting,
could work.
I'm not getting, nope, not gonna be my job. Okay, let's see, we are, so,
Eventually, Eddie, does that mean before or after you?
so
Ed?
what I meant by eventually is that the city has, as a part of their major thoroughfare plan, has identified Eddie Lane as a minor arterial, which means that it is planned to eventually be, assuming all build out, a 3-lane road, 1 lane going in each direction and then a turn lane in the middle. So the traffic study that we have done does not trigger the requirement of that at this point. However, we are working through at least trying to get a portion of that done with the project. Let's see, why then is the school expanded?
Yeah, Kurt, I can't answer that. What all I can do and is tell y'all what I am told from the school people. And once again, I did not talk to him. Greg did. But when we called and we talked to him about enrollment and vacancies and things like that, and I don't want to quote a number, so I'm not wrong, but I would say there was significant amount of room for that school to take kids. Was that fair, Matt?
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Someone's asked about the core differences of zoning and light industrial. Light industrial is what it's zoned now. It's what most of this area is. Envision Franklin, which I know there's some aldermen on here, some who might like Brownland and some who don't, but Envision Franklin is a guide. And so when we go for zonings as developers, we do our best to meet the guideline of Envision Franklin. Brownland, the staff would say, I'm not meeting the guidelines of it. Here, I think the staff would say the staff hasn't made any recommendation because we haven't even made a formal submittal yet. But through all the pre-app meetings, the staff has indicated that we are in line with the guidelines. Is that fair to say, Matt?
Absolutely. I mean, the Envision
so-
Franklin specifically calls out that this is planned to be developed into multifamily and commercial. And to answer the core differences of the zoning, light industrial does not, you can't do residential in light industrial. So that's why the zoning would be to PD in order to meet the anticipated build out that Envision Franklin is talking about. It has to be rezoned in order to go to a mix of commercial and multifamily. So that's why we're doing the rezoning. The sidewalk to nowhere, I'm not sure what that is referring to at the moment. We'll come back to
So
that.
we will be providing connection up to the Liberty to where there is sidewalks. And then we are working with once again, we're working with the city. We've already met with the city about Eddie Lane and sidewalks. And we have talked to very briefly talked to the ward alderman about what his desires are. And like I said, we are not there today. We haven't even made a formal submittal, but it's on our list, or it's one of the goals to see what we can do with the sidewalks. But we're not planning on doing the data center where there's a sidewalk that doesn't go anywhere on either side. We will at least make connections up to Liberty Pike and in all likelihood, make other connections too.
I think that kind of answers, I'm not really sure if walkability is your main draw to these units, then why not invest in true pedestrian pathways? I think that's what we're talking about. And I'm concerned with the number of people with our infrastructure problems. What would be the order of the development? Would the approval require the sidewalks to be funded and constructed before the development of the apartments?
Well, the road improvements would definitely be done before the apartments are opened. And, that sidewalk connection to Liberty. Once again, I would be totally speaking out of line to say where about the other sidewalks, because they're just not figured out yet.
Right. How do you expect to put 260 units without first addressing Eddie Lane? Well, I think the answer is that it would be addressed in conjunction with. It
Well,
would be-
and we're on Zoom, and so that's great for me, so no one can throw anything and hit me. At least you can virtually, but not physically. The traffic study does not feel the same way about Eddie Lane as I think y'all do. I understand that, and I know how emotional traffic is, and I feel like everyone is coming from New Jersey, the way that people get angry nowadays on the road. But Eddie Lane is not, and please don't shoot me. According to the traffic study and according to what the city makes us do, Eddie Lane is not a insufficient road for vehicles. For pedestrians, maybe, but not for vehicles. I don't know about backpedaling. Anything we are gonna do is gonna be in agreement with, before this plan is approved with the city. So we'll be entered into an agreement with the city. There's no backpedaling, because if we don't do it, we don't get to open our apartments. Liberty Elementary expanding. I'm not sure why you think families with children aren't moving into the areas. Who are you expecting to rent your apartments?
It's becoming more and more difficult for families with young children to be able to afford homes in the area. That's, I mean, the median price in Franklin right now, what is it? Is it 700 or 800,000?
There's so many numbers going around. No, the median plot price is higher than that. Someone sent me a report last week. There were 77 active listings in the city of Franklin. 14 of them were under $1 million. The other 63 were over $1 million. And that is the issue. Typically, people with that much money, kids are older, and I'm not inventing things. We have seen this with lots of places. I'm old enough, I guess, to have seen it, where, you know, city schools, as the areas become more gentrified, they start struggling with population. And in Nashville, we've closed several of them down, and you can say Nashville's got a school problem, overcrowding. And it does in some schools, and there's just some schools that are really struggling for students. So I'm not saying any Franklin special school is struggling for students. All I'm saying is we asked the school what the capacity was, what they had, and what they was expecting, and those were the numbers they gave us, and they gave us exact numbers that we can provide to y'all if you would like.
Okay, a rewording of a question earlier. Do we envision having this development completed before the sidewalks? And I'm assuming that they mean the sidewalks, the completed full sidewalk from Eddie Lane to Murfreesboro Road, or sorry, from Liberty Pike to Murfreesboro Road.
Once again, we have not submitted this plan yet, although we hope to next week. We have not got a great feel on whether we're going with condos or apartments. In this real estate market, it's hard to miss, but you know, markets don't last forever. We have not worked out, beyond us providing a sidewalk from our site to Liberty Lane, where that focus is going to be. And not just that, but we're not the only development that's going on right now in front of the lane. Who all is going to participate? There's several sources out there, and we're working to get it coordinated and done. And as soon as we're not going to, there's several aldermen on this call. We're not going to get up to the board and go, oh yeah, forget it. We're not doing that. We're gonna be meeting and working this out. I don't know about moving eggs, nests, or birds. I doubt buzzards are on the endangered species list. I don't want to go and kill nobody's birds either. I just don't know how to handle the birds, Debbie. Well, I've never dealt with that situation before with buzzards. Typically, once they're dead, finished eating the dead animals, they move on, but I don't know. We'll look at it and see what we can do.
Plan district wasn't a category in Envision Franklin, which is what I was trying to understand, what category you're most trying to align with. So we would not have to change the Envision Franklin, the design concept because of the, what's the word I'm looking for? The special consideration that's already in place. So we would stay industrial flex. And then what is the intent of the office space, property management, or for other commercial lease space? Kevin, you want to answer that?
We want to lease it.
Yeah, okay.
I don't have a great answer for it, other than I think there's a lot of individual businesses, that nowadays want to work close to where they live, and I think that there'd just be a need for some office space.
Yeah. If Alan Sims, if it was planned to be residential, why hasn't it already been rezoned? Okay, so when I say it was planned to be a
Well,
residential,
hold on. I mean, the simple answer is Co-op decided to sell the property. Co-op's been there forever. They decided to sell. We approached Co-op and asked what the future was. They said, we really would like to get to where our core business is. It's no longer downtown Franklin. They asked if we could build them a new building. We found a place in exchange for this property. And that's the impetus behind it. Co-op was no longer, their core constituents was no longer here. Their core constituency is further south. So that is why this is happening right now. It's
what about the drainage across the site?
I'm not sure what you're referring to, Kurt. I know that we have to meet all the requirements with the stormwater regulations. They are intense. Franklin has some of the strictest regulations around, but we don't have any waters of the state or streams or anything on our site except for those two areas that Matt showed, and that's already been determined by a hydraulic determination with the state, in conjunction with the state.
And I'm going to try and pull up the, I was going to pull up the impact study and see if I could find how many trips that, I think that was one of the next questions. You don't remember that? off
And
the top?
I'm not sure if I've been confusing people about the sidewalks. As part of our site, we will be required to complete an improvement of Eddy Lane from our site to Eddy Court, which will include a multimodal trail. Is that what they call that, Matt?
Yeah. I believe
Which
so.
is, in my opinion, the same as a sidewalk. It's just bigger than a sidewalk. And then it has been brought to our attention by the ward alderman and even the staff, or even some of the older aldermen before, when we was talking to them a year ago about the sidewalk situation in Eddy, and would we have any interest in participating? We said we would, and we are meeting very early on, but we are meeting with the city, and the city has an interest in doing something with us. And there are other developments on Eddy Lane that have improvements. And so it's the very beginning of some meetings, but the goal is to hopefully improve the sidewalk situation along Eddy Lane. The traffic study was just done.
Yeah,
it was
I'm-
just done. Debbie, I paid for it, and not that only I paid for our traffic study, but I also paid for the city to hire someone to review it, because that's what the city makes you do. So the traffic study, if you think I have any influence, I don't. The engineer meets with the city engineer. The city engineer tells them what to evaluate, how to evaluate, how and when they want counts done. And then when they do the study, the city says who they want to review it, and I have to pay for it, and I don't get to talk to them, and they make their recommendations based off that. So it is a very developer hands-off with the traffic.
It was developed, and it was done in February of 2022 when schools were in session, is what I'm reading here.
And guys, I don't know how many ways to say it. I apologize. We are only repeating what the special school district of Franklin has told us. I am not, I don't, my kids are out of high school. They're in college, thank God. Oh, well, that's expensive, but
Mhm.
I don't go to those schools. I'm not arguing with anybody out there. I'm not saying anyone's wrong. I'm not saying how many kids or this or that. I'm just telling you what the numbers and the capacity was told to us by the Franklin Special School. There's not numbers we're inventing or coming up with. Have you shared the traffic study? I don't think we have, but
We've sent it to, it's under review by the city currently. I think that probably it's better that we have them fully complete their review before we share it. But that's what they're looking at it currently.
yeah, once again, we have not decided. I know that I've had some aldermen, I've not talked to all the aldermen, first of all. I've had some that say, yeah, if we can do apartments, this might be a good place. I've had some say, I think we have too many apartments. Have you considered condos? We are having those discussions right now to try to figure out how to accomplish several things, how to provide some affordable housing, which we think is important. What is the best use of this? We are going through all that. How to get Eddie Lane improved, which is a pre-existing condition. There's a lot of moving pieces on this property because this area is a little bit older, but this area is changing rapidly, just like everywhere else in Middle Tennessee, and the factory will be a big piece of it. What are the other sources that are developing in the area? Debbie, I know that there's an office building that one Jen's looking at, and I know that the Franklin Special School District is building an office, and I think he may even be on here. I don't want to speak for them, but that's what I've been told.
Right. There's something going on across the street, but we don't know what it is exactly. But those are the people that we're going to be in contact with and working through the things we're talking about on Eddie Lane.
I don't think there's any PD zoning across the street, Ken. I think you're talking about Envision Franklin. I don't think, is the Franklin Special School District zoning it? Do you know, Matt?
I was already changed the street. Well, I don't know that. Sorry. I wasn't following what you were saying, but I see the comment now. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Kurt, we are not allowed to increase discharge at all of the co-op. And in all likelihood, when we develop things, typically we end up decreasing it a little bit. Then, like I said, Franklin's got very strict stormwater regulations that were not in place when the co-op was built. So there'll be a lot of infiltration and other things. The traffic study will be available to the public. That means that the city finish its review. That way it's the final study, but yes, we're not going to hide the traffic study.
Debbie, we agree, and we understand that those are hazardous situations that currently exist, and we are working through some options to provide safe travel off of Eddie Lane during a storm event.
Yeah, we will be required. I mean, we have been talking to the city about this for 2 years, and we have already done some studies to look at what it will take to get Eddie Lane from Liberty Pike to our site 100% out of the floodplain, and at the same time give the residents a way to have a direction to go, and when the other side floods, that they can get there out of the floodplain. So it's not a co-op on its own problem. It is a problem. Several developments have violated Franklin's own ordinance here on Eddie Lane. As being in Brownland and going through all that, I can tell you, but it's going to be a problem that will be fixed with this.
I know you mentioned 3 lanes would be in place for your proposed development of Liberty Pike intersection. Did I understand correctly? The city has already approved turning Eddie Lane to a 3-lane road from Liberty Pike to Murfreesboro Road. Does it narrow to? So I'm just talking about, when I talk about the city, they haven't approved that, but it's a part of their major thoroughfare plan, so they're long-term planning documents. So the intent is that one day it will be, but if it for some reason doesn't develop the way they anticipate, or develops differently, maybe it doesn't become that way, but the planning documents are in place for it to one day be a 3-lane road, is I guess the best way of putting it.
Mhm. And then Kurt Hamlin's asking about soil contamination. We have clean phase 1 and 2. So we're good there.
Okay. We're
Is
about
that it?
5 minutes till the end of this Zoom. I think we've answered most that we can, but yeah, some of you have already started reaching out to Greg and I via email. Please keep doing that. If you have questions, we do not mind responding to you and answering questions over email. I try to just put all your questions
Hey,
into one.
Matt, can I ask one more question while we got a minute or so?
Sure, go ahead, Don.
I was curious about, given the tradition in Franklin of trying to get low-income housing approved, and how it has a tendency to stretch into upper income units, along the way. It just does, just because of the nature of where we're at location-wise and the materials that are required sometimes by, local codes. And we're gonna end up doing pretty expensive projects, and you kind of do lean and head in that direction. If you were to project in the direction of having a higher income housing, is there a lower number of units that you could be satisfied with as a developer that would make it worthwhile for you to do the project than 260?
Yes, well, once again, this always happens in Franklin. So let me back up. People throw the word affordable housing out like it's confetti. What we're talking about is building a unit and deed restricting it to where it has to be sold at that 85%, and then that deed transferred to the next person. So they're not going to take a loss when they sell, but they can't sell it for market rate. That's controlled by the government. You see what I'm saying, Don?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the only true affordable housing. Everything else, people throw around, us evil developers and go, oh, we want affordable housing and we're going to sell this for 285. But by the time you get developed and you sell it, someone buys it for 350, turns around and flips it for 500. I can show you a ton of them at Berry Farms. They did just that. Yes, if we end up doing higher end condos, which you can do, Jameson Station, they sell for like $600,000, and Berry Farms, which is way further out there, and I love Berry Farms, but I don't think it's as good of a location as this. Maybe it's not as industrial around it, but it's quite a bit further out there. They sell in the 550s to 600. If we end up doing for sale, we will still agree to do a smaller number of units as affordable. It is important to at least do some to get a few units here and there. So
it seems to me that as you proceed forward with this, the willingness to drop down in the number of units might make the project reasonable to people that live around the area. If you drop the density and you increase the price, and you can still profit from it to the degree that you needed to make it reasonable to do the project. That I hate to say it, because I'm a supporter of the idea of affordable housing as well, but it's not the affordability of it that's the issue. It's the density of the population that you find standing in your backyard, that everybody's concerned about. And I don't think that's a selfish thing for them to be concerned about. You talk about people moving somewhere and getting established, and then they don't want anybody else to move there, because it's a place everybody wants to be, but you want to cut everybody else out. Yeah, I understand that. I don't want to do that to anybody, but unless you could do a smaller number of units and say, this is fixed income, you can't pay more than a certain amount for that. I just don't really see how everybody can be satisfied.
It's got to be a fixed income deed restriction. But let me give you my developer spiel for just a second. And I appreciate everyone's questions. Everyone's been polite, and I try to be respectful when I'm at these meetings too. I think it should be a conversation, not a one-way conversation. I'm a developer, there's economics. I don't think y'all realize we don't make quite as much money as we're portrayed to sometimes, and we take a ton of risk. You know, a project like this is a 50, $60 million investment. I am not against condos being sold in a smaller number. My smaller number may not meet your smaller number, Don, but there's a number where it works and it doesn't work. And I tell everybody, and today I've spent 40, 50 grand. I don't like to lose 40, 50 grand, but if I walk away, the problem is Co-op has decided to sell this. And I almost guarantee everyone who comes in beside me is going to want to do just what I do, because it's about the only way to make the site work. And it's not just this property. There's all types of property on Eddie Lane that want to be sold right now because they can go further out and make a ton of money on their property, which is large, and they didn't pay very much for it when they bought it. And I don't blame them. None of us are going to sit here and sell our house for less than what someone's willing to pay for, right? And Franklin, when I got here, had 20,000 people, and now we're at 80. So almost all of us have come since 95. So yeah, there's a middle ground. We are open to the middle ground. We don't come in here saying it's this way or the highway. I never do that. You live here. I don't live down here in Eddie Lane. I have had a lot of development where I live, and my ride has got longer. I can empathize with it. I don't think I can stop people from moving to the city. And, you know, I tell everybody, Franklin invites every corporate headquarters they can to come here. You know, Franklin has created how many high paying jobs to the point where the average sales price of a house is now close to $1 million. So Franklin is a very unique place. But yes, I don't want to cause pain to anybody. If we end up selling them, it would be a smaller amount of units because they would be larger. So they obviously is going to be a smaller amount of units. And we are not against that. I'm trying to accomplish a couple things here, and that's very difficult. And, you know, what the road improvements have to be done to fix this floodplain, that's not going to be a super cheap thing. Sidewalks are a big issue to a lot of people. And, you know, for everyone who says, hey, but walking won't get rid of cars. Well, I mean, guys, I never walked anywhere until I got close enough to walk to something. And then if it takes as long to get in the car, drive and park, you end up walking. I mean, it's not, I'm old and I'm open to the change. It will happen.
Kevin,
And Franklin is developing its downtown. So once again, that's all I'm saying. I appreciate everything, guys.
let me just quickly answer these last couple questions from Matt Dunn. So you haven't bought it yet. I'm kind of going in reverse order, but you haven't bought it yet. It's under contract and pending a development plan approval, right?
That's correct.
So that's very typical of how things are done, not only in Franklin, but across the country when it comes to purchasing property and developing it. Affordable is important to whom? I think it should be important to everybody that there is some affordable housing in your community. Certainly important to us as you know, neighbors in the community, and I think it's important to your aldermen and to your planning staff, and yeah, so it's important to everybody. And then you were talking about deed restrictions for the affordable, and that's correct, Kevin.
Yeah, it's the only way to keep something affordable.
Right, I agree.
If I went out there and built something and sold it cost, say it was 300 and the guy bought it at 300, no deed restriction, he's just gonna turn around and sell it for 600.
Right.
What percentage of these do you expect to put on deed
I
restrictions?
don't know. Once again, I don't even know whether I'm renting or selling them at the moment, man. You know, tonight's been great. I've heard everyone. It allows me to kind of digest this and then regroup with Greg and Matt. And then I would like to talk to the aldermen and understand their excitement or concerns, and then meet with the city and take all that and sit down and make some final decisions.
Well, thank you
So-
all. Debbie, that's a perfect way to end I think everyone wants a good neighbor. Speaking for myself, I just want whoever develops the property to make Eddie Lane a better route, safer roadway and walkable for those of us who live here. And thanks everyone for being calm and polite. I couldn't say it better myself. And we really do want to be good neighbors and friends as developers of this site. We want you to have something that you're proud of the same way that we are when we're done. So I would certainly encourage you to stay in contact with us. I'll go ahead and I'm going to type my email in here at the bottom, gdc-tn.com. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and whether I can answer them or Greg can answer them or Kevin can answer them, we'll get back to you. And we can, continue taking your input as we're moving this forward. Last thing, next steps, we intend to submit this on the 11th, I believe, a week from yesterday. To the planning staff. There's a review period, and then the planning commission meeting would be, let's see, I believe it's the 26th of May. 26th of May would be planning commission, and then there would be BOMA meetings after that. There will be opportunities for you all to make public comment at these meetings. But this is a required neighborhood meeting. We're not against having a future neighborhood meeting that isn't required. So it's something that I think Kevin does a really great job of, is staying in touch with the neighbors in the area so that you all can feel like you're a part of this as well. So don't hesitate to email me. And if we need to set up another meeting, we will, but those are kind of the deadline, or that's the timing right now. And if anything changes, you will be updated. So thank you all so much. We really appreciate the input, and we look forward to talking with you more in the future.
How do we get updated, by the way? Like,
You will
there's no
get,
email lit.
yes, so you will be updated. You'll get an email, or I guess, I'm sorry, you'll get a letter before planning commission, which is the next time. Technically, that's the next step in the process where the public has the opportunity to speak or interact. But as I was saying, we want to keep in touch.
I think that with all the stuff we heard tonight, we're gonna submit it next week, but if there's gonna be changes, and there's a great chance there'll be changes, it'll be deferred. And I will be in contact with Alderman Baggett, and I am sure, I'm not speaking for Alderman Baggett, so if Patrick's on here, shut me up if I say something wrong, but I would not be surprised that we have another meeting before we really get to a planning commission meeting. We don't really like going to the planning commission without having met with the community more than just once. This is a requirement, but if you were anywhere around Brownland, I've had 20 some odd meetings out there. So we're not afraid to, we're your neighbor to some degree here through this as we're going through this, and we will have another meeting before planning commission. I am sure of that. But in all likelihood, even though we're starting the submittal with planning, this probably be deferred if we have to make some changes. And I gotta get some more input from Alderman, but I wouldn't be surprised if we make some changes.
So Matt, you've got my email. If you want to send me an email, then, I can put together a list that if something changes and I can send it out to you all, so you're the first to know.
Well, let me also ask you this, since I think we had to all register, so you have our email addresses for the this Zoom call.
True.
Can we not just be updated by everybody that attended this thing, receive an update if something?
Sure.
Because,
We can certainly update you if things are deferred, we'll let you know. But also, as we're putting together the next neighborhood meeting and things like that, we'll keep you in the loop. Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you all so much. We're gonna log off, and we'll be talking to you all in the future.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thanks, Matt.
Mhm.